Hello and welcome to today's Woven Daily. My name is Ruth and today we are going to be looking at Acts chapter 5 verse 13 to 27. Just as a side note, we're kind of picking up bang smack in the middle of the story here, so if you have time, go back a couple of days and watch those videos first before you jump into here. It'll make a little bit more sense. If you don't have time, don't worry too much because I'm going to go through the key characters that are mentioned in this verse. So, to kick us off, we have got the Apostle Paul. He has been spreading the news about Jesus across the Roman world and Central Europe. Where we join him now, he has spent about 2 years in prison. He's been imprisoned by the Romans at the request of the Jewish people. There is a man called Governor Felix. He was the governor of this area. He was the one who imprisoned Paul, but he is now no longer the governor. Governor Festus, however, is the governor at the moment, and because he didn't imprison Paul initially, he's unsure as to whether him being in prison is justified. Paul is also asked to be tried by the emperor, to put his case towards the emperor, rather than any of the other Jewish courts. And then finally we have King Agrippa and his wife Bernice. Now King Agrippa was the king of this region, however he is still answerable to the emperor in Rome. So those are the key players. I'm going to jump straight in to Acts chapter 25 verse 13, going all the way to the end of the chapter at verse 27. So, after several days had passed, King Agrippa and Bernice arrived at Caesarea to welcome Festus. Since they were staying there several days, Festus had laid Paul's case before the king, saying, "There is a man who is left in prison by Felix. When I was in Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews informed me about him and asked for a sentence against him. I told them that it was not the custom of the Romans to hand over anyone before the accused had met the accusers face to face and had given a chance to make a defence against the charge. So, when they met here, I lost no time, but on the next day took my seat on the tribunal and ordered the man to be brought. When the accusers stood up, they did not charge him with any of the crimes that I was expecting. Instead, they had certain points of disagreement with him about their own religion and a certain Jesus who had died, but whom Paul had asserted to be alive. Since I was at a loss how to investigate these questions, I asked whether he wished to go to Jerusalem and be tried there on these charges. But when Paul appealed to be kept in the custody for the decision of his imperial majesty, I ordered him to be held until I could send him to the emperor." Agrippa said to Festus, "I would like to hear the man myself." "Tomorrow," he said, "you will hear him." So on the next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp, and they entered the audience hall with the military tribunes and the prominent men of the city. Then Festus gave the order, and Paul was brought in. And Festus said, "King Agrippa, and all here present with us, you see this man about whom the whole Jewish community petitioned me, both in Jerusalem and here, shouting that he ought not to live any longer. But I found that he had done nothing deserving death. And when he appealed to his imperial majesty, I decided to send him. But I have nothing definite to write to our sovereign about him. Therefore, I've brought him before all of you, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after we have examined him, I may have something to write. For it seems to me unreasonable to send a prisoner without indicating the charges against him." Well, the poor old Romans, they seem to have got themselves into a bit of a tiz. On one hand, they are trying to please the Jewish people around them, but on the other hand, they have no idea why they're supposed to imprison Paul or even why they're supposed to kill him. When they try to examine Paul, they just end up even more confused, because from their point of view, the issues are points of disagreement. They are not things that mean that Paul should be put to death. And when I've been thinking about this, I've been thinking about some of the disagreements we sometimes have in church and how, from the outside, they must look completely bonkers. Disagreements about wearing hats or standing up, or the types of songs we sing, or the types of words we use, the types of robes we wear. All of these things must look completely bonkers to have arguments about from the outside. And I've been thinking that maybe all the squabbling and the disagreements and some of the infighting that goes on between Christians and within churches is confusing people, because we're supposed to be God's representatives on earth. We're supposed to be pointing the way to Jesus. We are calling Nottingham to the wonder and way of Jesus. And that can all get a little bit confusing if, rather than pointing upwards, we're pointing fingers and shouting at one another. So as I've been thinking about this, and I have been struggling and questioning my own actions and parts of this, maybe we need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and reflect that maybe some of the things we argue about, some of the things we fight over, are more distractions and more damaging than what our mission is and what we're trying to do. Because ultimately we should be pointing people to Jesus, not confusing them and wondering why on earth we're squabbling. I've also been thinking about how God can use people in very surprising ways. Here in this passage, we have the Roman authorities who are effectively protecting Paul and stopping him being killed. It's not the religious authorities that are promoting Paul, it's the secular authority that's protecting him. And when I look at the life of Jesus, he also regularly promoted, encouraged, socialised with the marginalised, the outcast, the oddballs of society that other people would probably just push aside. In fact, Jesus had plenty to say against the religious authorities at the time, and plenty to say against the Pharisees. God chooses the weak things of this world to shame the strong. God uses people in surprising ways, and ways we would never have thought of. And we need to have our hearts open and our eyes open to be able to see when God is working through surprising people. Because, as Romans 8 says, in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. So on that note, I just want to close in prayer. God, we thank you so much that you can use all people and all situations, no matter how surprising, to your glory. We are sorry when we get things wrong, when we decide to squabble and argue and focus on things other than you. Give us clarity to know what you want us to do. Give us kindness and patience with other people. Let us be tolerant in difficult times. Amen. Amen. Thank you for joining us.